The Dominion Council Chamber was built to intimidate. Black stone walls curved upward into a dome so high it disappeared into shadow, banners of the Karzul Empire draped like fresh scars. The floor was polished obsidian, reflecting the towering figure at its center, General Vorik. His armor caught the light like a blade, every edge sharp, every joint lined with crimson inlays that pulsed faintly with his heartbeat. "Humans will kneel," Vorik declared. His voice rolled through the chamber, distorted through a translation lattice that made it sound like gravel grinding inside steel. His mandibles clicked once, sealing his sentence with finality. Captain Elias Kane stood across from him, dwarfed by the alien's height, but unmoved. He had faced firestorms, orbital bombardments, and close-quarter hell against Dominion shock troops. This, just words in a chamber, was almost laughable. He let the silence stretch, eyes locked on the aliens. Then he leaned forward, scarred cheek catching the sterile glow of the chamber's lights. "You'll kneel," Kane said evenly, "when your legs are broken." The room froze. Dominion attendants hissed in disbelief, claws tightening on ceremonial spears. Vorik's gaze narrowed, a predator caught between rage and amusement. The translation lattice buzzed with static, as though even the machine doubted Kane's audacity. "You speak boldly," Vorik said at last, voice low, dangerous. "Do you believe your kind can resist an empire that has broken 100 worlds? Entire species snapped beneath our heel?" Kane didn't flinch. "You don't break us. You just make us fight harder." The alien's mandibles twitched, a smile or something close. "Then you will die harder. I will burn your cities, scatter your fleets, and carve obedience into bones of your kind. Humanity's legacy will be servitude." Kane straightened his expression iron. "Legacy isn't built by kneeling. It's built by standing when every instinct says to fall. That's why you'll never own us." The silence that followed wasn't peace. It was a taut wire stretched to breaking. Vorik lifted one clawed hand. "So be it. The humans have chosen defiance. When Vera 9 burns, your people will see what their captain's arrogance has cost them." He lowered his hand, a signal that ended the audience. Kane turned and walked out without another word. He could feel Dominion eyes drilling into his back, but he refused to give them the satisfaction of haste. The shuttle ride back to the Resolute was quiet. Through the viewport, Kane saw Vera 9 below, half its surface veiled in cloud, oceans catching the light of the nearby star. To him, it wasn't just a planet. It was proof. Humanity had fought tooth and nail to hold it, building colonies on soil the Dominion wanted. Every battle scar carved into its land was a declaration. We endure. Inside the troop bay, Kane's second-in-command, Lieutenant Marver, finally spoke. That was suicide. Kane looked at her. Talking back to him? Threatening Vorik in his own chamber. You might as well have spit in his face. Kane shrugged. He needed to know we're not afraid. Fear's what he feeds on. If he smells it, he wins before the fight even starts. Mara shook her head. The fleet's already stretched thin. If he launches a full offensive, he will... Kane cut in. His voice was steady, certain. And when he does, we'll be ready. Her jaw tightened, but she didn't argue. She knew as well as he did. Hesitation had no place now. Back aboard the Resolute, Kane walked the command deck. The ship wasn't large compared to Dominion dreadnoughts, just a heavy frigate, but its crew looked at him with unshaken trust. These weren't soldiers of conquest. They were defenders, people who knew the value of every inch of ground they held. "Captain on deck," the helmsman announced. Kane waved it off. "Status. Orbital patrols report Dominion fleet movements near the outer ring," the officer replied. "At least 2 carriers, escorted by cruisers. No sign of Vorik's flagship yet. They're positioning for a strike," Kane said. His eyes narrowed on the tactical map, the red markers tightening around Vera, 9 like a noose. He's making a show of patience, but the hammer's coming down. Mara joined him at the display. "We can't match their tonnage. If he commits, we won't hold orbit. Then we make him bleed for every kilometer," Kane said. "Every fighter run, every ambush, every trick in the book. Dominion soldiers expect enemies to collapse once they hit. We don't. That's our edge. The comms officer turned. Captain, Dominion broadcast incoming, general channel. Put it through. The screen above the deck flickered. Vorik appeared, his armored form filling the view. His voice was cold, almost ceremonial. Humans of Vera 9, your captain has sealed your fate. Refuse to kneel, and you will burn. I will reduce your cities to ash and scatter your survivors as slaves. Choose wisely, your hour is short. The broadcast cut. Silence hung over the deck. Kane broke it with a single sentence. We'll answer him on the battlefield. Later, in the quiet of his quarters, Kane let himself breathe. He set his rifle against the wall, sat heavily on the edge of the bunk, and stared at the scarred metal floor. Words replayed in his head. Humans will kneel. He had heard variations of that line for years. Every Dominion officer, every propaganda reel, every arrogant alien commander had said it. But Vorik was different. He didn't just want victory. He wanted submission. He wanted humanity broken in spirit, not just in body. Kane's hand tightened into a fist. That was something he couldn't allow. His door chimed. Mara stepped in without waiting for permission, a datapad at her hands. Fleet Command just confirmed. Dominion reinforcements are inbound. Vera, 9 is their opening move. Kane stood, shoulders squared again. The fatigue vanished under resolve. Then this is where we draw the line. Mara studied him, eyes searching. And if we can't hold it, then we make damn sure they remember what it cost them. She nodded once, understanding. It wasn't bravado. It was fact. Hours later, the Resolute drifted into formation with the rest of the Terran Defense Fleet. On the horizon, the stars warped with the telltale distortion of Dominion drives. Red markers blossomed across the tactical display, like wounds spreading through the sky. Vorik's fleet had arrived. Kane stood at the command rail, gaze fixed forward. Behind him, his crew readied weapons, shields, and comms. He didn't need to say much. They already knew. Still, he spoke, voice carrying across the deck. Vorik thinks we'll kneel. He thinks fear will do his work for him. He's wrong. We don't bow. We don't break. We fight, and we make him regret every step he takes into our sky. The crew answered with a low, determined murmur. It wasn't cheering. They didn't need noise. They needed resolve. And they had it. The Dominion fleet unfolded from the void, massive hulls blotting out the stars. At its center, Vorik's flagship loomed, a fortress of steel and crimson fire. Kane's jaw tightened. The wire was about to snap. Battle stations, he ordered. Let's show them what humanity does when someone tells us to kneel. Columns of fire lanced through Vera 9 sky, slamming into the surface with earth-shattering violence. Cities burned before evacuation finished, plumes of smoke rising high enough to stain orbit. Kane watched the firestorms from a dropship viewport. As it pierced the atmosphere, he forced himself to look. Turning away would be cowardice, and his soldiers needed to see their captain unflinching. Impact zones confirmed, Mara reported. Strapped and across from him, civilians scattered, resistance pockets forming, but Dominion ground troops are deploying fast. Kane's jaw worked as the ship jolted in turbulence. We hit them before they consolidate. No strongholds, no comfort. They bleed for every inch. The squad of armored soldiers nodded. They weren't conscripts. These were Terran Accord elites, volunteers hardened by years of border wars. They didn't cheer, didn't shout. They simply checked weapons and locked in their visors. The dropship's alarms blared. Incoming fire. The pilot juked hard. Energy bolts streaked past, searing the clouds. Kane gripped the overhead rail as the hull groaned. Hold steady, he ordered, voice calm despite the lurching. They want us scattered. We land intact, or we're ash. The ship screamed through the sky and finally broke into clear air. Below, Dominion landing craft slammed into the plains outside the mining colony of Ardenspire. The colony was vital. Its fuel reserves powered half the defense grid. If the Dominion took it, Vera, 9 would fall in days. Approaching LZ, the pilot barked. Brace. The dropship hit dirt with bone-jarring force. The hatch blew open, and Kane was first out. Dust, heat, and the thundering footsteps of Dominion war machines filled the air. He raised his rifle. Line up, cover fire. Bolts of plasma ripped through the haze, striking armored alien soldiers advancing in formation. The Dominion infantry were massive, their carapace armor glinting with crimson sigils. Their weapons spat molten energy, melting stone and steel alike. Kane dropped to one knee, sighted, and squeezed the trigger. His round punched through an alien's visor, sending the giant crashing backward. Push forward. The squad advanced in staggered formation, rifles hammering. Mara tossed a shock charge that detonated under 2 Dominion soldiers, hurling them apart in a spray of shrapnel. Keep pressure. Kane barked. Don't let them regroup. The Dominion line faltered under the sudden ferocity. They weren't used to resistance this vicious, this early. Kane intended to make sure they never adjusted. A deafening roar shook the field. A Dominion warstrider, a towering four-legged mech bristling with cannons, emerged from the smoke. Its guns tracked, targeting the squad's cover. Strider, Mara shouted. On it! Kane slung his rifle and pulled the launcher from his back. The Strider fired, shredding the wall he ducked behind. Masonry exploded around him. He rolled, sighted, and fired a rocket. The warhead streaked across the battlefield and slammed into the mech's knee joint. The leg buckled, sending the Strider crashing sideways. Move. Take it down. Kane roared. The squad poured fire into the crippled machine. Sparks erupted as its systems overloaded. Then the warstrider exploded, scattering its own infantry in the blast. Cheers rippled from nearby militia fighters who had joined the defense. Kane raised a hand to silence them. Save it. They're not done. Hours of brutal street fighting followed. Dominion troops pressed in waves, methodical and overwhelming. But Kane's forces countered with ambushes, traps, and sheer refusal to break. Every collapsed building became a barricade. Every ruined street, an improvised kill zone. At one intersection, Mara crouched beside Kane, both of them pinned down by turret fire. Sparks showered as rounds tore into the wall above them. We're burning through ammo faster than resupply can reach us, she said, voice hard over comms. We can't hold like this. Kane checked his rifle, nearly empty. He looked past the firestorm to the Dominion lines tightening around the colony. We don't need to hold forever, just long enough to make them bleed, until Vorik has to commit more troops. The longer we drag this out, the thinner he spreads. And if he doesn't, then we improvise until he makes a mistake. That night, smoke choked the sky. Fires painted the horizon red. Kane stood atop a battered comms tower, scanning the battlefield through binoculars. Dominion troops were regrouping beyond the hills, their encampments glowing with energy fields. The colony behind him lay scarred but alive, supply depots intact, civilians still moving through evacuation corridors. Mara climbed up beside him. Recon drones confirmed what we suspected. They're consolidating armor here, and here. She pointed to the map glowing on her wrist display. They're prepping for a full push at dawn. Kane nodded slowly. They want a decisive strike. They think if they break us once, the colony will fold. Not far off, Mara admitted. Morale's brittle. Militia are exhausted, even our people. They'll hold, Kane said firmly, not because they're unbreakable, because they know the alternative is worse. Mara studied him, expression caught between admiration and concern. You really think defiance alone will carry us? Kane lowered the binoculars. His face was grim, lit by the burning skyline. Defiance isn't the weapon. It's the trigger. Once it's pulled, we fight like hell, and we make sure Vorik never forgets who lit the fire. At dawn, the Dominion came. Columns of armored infantry advanced with precision, supported by tanks that shook the ground with every shell. Above, fighters screamed across the sky, strafing human positions. The colony's walls rattled under the onslaught. Kane stood at the front line, rifle in hand. All units, now! Mines buried overnight erupted beneath the tanks, tearing tracks apart. Fighters caught anti-air fire from hidden batteries, spiraling down in flames. Kane's squad sprang from concealment, unleashing concentrated fire that ripped through the lead infantry ranks. The air filled with chaos. Explosions, screams, the crack of rifles against alien roars. Kane fought like a man possessed, every shot precise, every order clear. He dropped another alien, then another, moving as though fueled by inevitability. Over comms, Vorik's voice thundered, broadcast the battlefield. You delay only the inevitable, humans. Kneel, and your deaths will have meaning. Resist, and you will be forgotten in fire. Kane keyed his comms, replying across the open channel. If we're forgotten, it's because your empire couldn't erase us fast enough. The words carried, even through the roar of battle. Militia fighters who heard them fought harder, teeth clenched, weapons steady. Vorik wanted surrender. Kane gave him defiance. The battle raged into nightfall. Dominion forces pulled back, leaving wreckage scattered across the plain. Human bodies lay among them, too many, but the colony still stood. Kane sat on a broken wall, helmet off, sweat streaking his dirt-caked face. His squad collapsed around him, battered but alive. Mara leaned against the rubble, bandaging a graze on her arm. "They'll be back," she said flatly. "Good," Kane replied, voice hoarse. "Means we hurt them enough to matter." Mara glanced at him. "You really think Vorik cares about casualties?" Kane's eyes hardened. "He cares about symbols. And we just gave him one hell of a bad look." The void burned with ship fire. Cruisers trading broadsides. Fighters swarming like hornets. Debris fields scattering across blackness. The Resolute shook under constant impacts, its shields flaring white every time Dominion batteries struck home. "Forward deflectors at 30%. The helmsman shouted over the alarms. "We can't hold this vector." Kane braced against the command rail, eyes fixed on the tactical display. Red Dominion markers swelled across the map, tightening around the Terran fleet, like a predator's jaws. Green, friendly markers flickered out one by one, ships winking into nothing. "Reroute power from aft," Kane ordered. "Keep the nose alive long enough for the carrier wings to regroup." "Captain," Mara called from the gunnery station. "If we strip the aft, they'll gut us the second we try to disengage." "Then don't disengage," Kane snapped. "We bleed forward. Only way through is through." The deck lurched as another Dominion cruiser cut across their bow, unleashing a storm of plasma. The Resolute's return fire hammered back, tearing holes through the enemy's flank. The alien vessel shuddered, split, and burst into a silent blossom of flame. The crew cheered, but Kane didn't. His eyes stayed on the bigger picture. For every Dominion ship that fell, two more filled the gap. Humanity's defense line was fracturing. "Fleet Command reports catastrophic losses," Mara said grimly. "The Courageous is gone. The Advent crippled. Half our destroyers are vapor." Kane's hand tightened on the rail. "Where's Vorik's flagship?" Mara pointed at the display. A massive crimson marker hovered at the rear of the Dominion formation, untouched, its aura of escorts unbroken. "Holding back. Watching." "Coward," Kane muttered. "He's letting his fleet wear us down before stepping in for the kill." The comms officer interrupted. "Transmission, Dominion open channel. Visual feed." Kane nodded. "Put him on." The screen above the deck lit with Vorik's image. The alien general loomed, armor gleaming under cold light. His voice dripped contempt. "I warned you, Captain. Humanity's defiance is a candle in a storm. One gust, and it dies." Kane stood tall, meeting the alien's gaze. "Funny thing about candles, Vorik, they light fires, and fires spread." Vorik's mandibles clicked in amusement. "Your fleet collapses. Your lines are shattered. Soon, Vera, 9 kneels, and you will kneel with it." Kane's voice was flat steel. "You'll kneel before me first. That's a promise." Vorik tilted his head, as if savoring the defiance. Then the feed cut. The battle dragged into its breaking point. The Terran line fractured under relentless fire. Ships pulled back in scattered formations. Communications scrambled, discipline fraying. The Resolute fought at the center of it all, engines screaming, armor scorched black. Inside, Kane stalked the deck like a wolf among exhausted men. He didn't allow despair to show, but it gnawed at him. Mara joined him during a lull. her face pale under the glow of failing lights. Elias, we're losing. He didn't answer at first. He just looked at the tactical map. Green markers dwindling, red swarming. She pressed on. We've given everything. The crew's running on fumes. If we don't retreat, there won't be anyone left to defend the ground. Kane finally spoke, voice low. If we pull out, Vorik turns this into a massacre. He doesn't just want victory. He wants humiliation, broadcast to every species watching. He'll put our survivors on their knees and beam it across the galaxy. Mara's eyes widened. You're sure? I've seen his type, Kane said. He's not fighting a war. He's writing a story. And he wants us cast as the broken. Silence stretched between them. Then Mara asked quietly, So what's our move? Kane exhaled through his nose. We stop playing defense. We take the fight to him. Her brow furrowed. You mean his flagship? That's suicide. Maybe, Kane admitted. His eyes were ice. But symbols cut both ways. If Vorik wants to make us an example, then we make him one first. Hours later, the Resolute limped into a shadowed orbit behind Vera 9's moon. Hull scorched, engine sputtering. The ship hid from Dominion sensors while the crew regrouped. Kane convened a small council in the dim war room. Here's what we know, he began, pointing at the holographic display. Vorik's flagship, the Bloodfang, is a dreadnought-class fortress. Shielding is near impenetrable, but intel from ground scouts indicates a weakness. Maintenance corridors beneath the primary reactor, lightly guarded. Designed for drones, not soldiers. One of the officers frowned. You're suggesting an insertion? Kane nodded. A strike team boards, cripples a reactor, and cuts off the head of the Dominion fleet. Without Vorik, their coordination collapses. The officer shook his head. That's a suicide run. Maybe, Kane said, but staying here and waiting to die is worse. Mara spoke next, tone even but resolute. Who leads the team? Kane met her eyes. I do. The room fell silent. Everyone knew what that meant. The captain wasn't just risking his life. He was putting himself at the very tip of humanity's defiance. Later, in the quiet of the observation deck, Kane stood alone. Below him, Vera, 9 burned, scarred by craters and fire. Above, wreckage drifted, silent tombs of ships and crews he had known. He thought of Vorik's words, of the Dominion's sneering certainty. Humans will kneel. His reflection in the viewport looked older than his years. Lines carved deep, eyes shadowed. But when he straightened, the steel returned. He wasn't fighting for victory anymore. He was fighting to deny the Dominion the story they wanted to tell. The door opened softly behind him. Mara stepped in. You should rest, she said. He gave a small, humorless laugh. Sleep's a luxury. You'll understand when you're captain. She leaned beside him, looking out at the burning world. You really believe this can work? Kane turned his gaze back to stars. I don't believe. I decide. Belief can break. Decisions hold. She studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Then I'll be ready. The decision was made. Humanity's fleet was broken, its line shattered. But Kane would not allow the story to end here on Dominion terms. If Vorik wanted submission, he would have to kneel first, dragged down by the very humans he thought would break. And Kane would be the one to do it. The battlefield was alive with 1,000 conflicting sounds. Distant artillery rumbling like thunder, the sizzle of energy discharges cutting the air, the uneven rhythm of boots on broken ground. Smoke hung heavy, mixing with the acrid stench of ozone and burnt metal. Amid this chaos, Marcus Vale pressed forward, his every movement precise, his mind locked on the one figure he had sworn to confront, General Koresh. The alien commander had entrenched himself within the forward bastion, a structure of jagged obsidian alloy jutting from the earth like a malignant growth. It pulsed faintly with alien energy, its angles sharp enough to slice the air itself. Intelligence suggested the bastion was both command post and symbol, the heart of the Zyrith advance. Destroy it, and the army would falter. Confront Koresh within, and the war might turn. Marcus adjusted his rifle, glancing back at Lieutenant Harlow. The man's face was pale under soot, but his jaw was firm. You're sure about this? Harlow asked, voice strained but steady. "There's no other way," Marcus said. "Cut off the head and the body collapses." The small strike team behind them nodded grimly. They all understood. No speeches were needed. They moved through trenches carved from shattered stone. Enemy patrols swept past in irregular intervals, their insectal limbs clattering against metal plates. Marcus timed the advance with surgical precision, ducking low, signaling silently. Twice, they froze as a squad of Zyrith warriors passed close enough for Marcus to hear the chitter of their mandibles. The air seemed to hum with tension, every second threatening discovery. Yet fortune favored them, or perhaps fear sharpened human stealth. When they reached the outer wall, Marcus studied the surface. The alloy shimmered faintly under the dim light of the war-torn sky, alive with flowing currents. It wasn't stone nor metal in the traditional sense, more like a living barrier, resonating with the pulse of the bastion itself. Ordinary explosives would scatter harmlessly. Marcus retrieved a compact device from his belt, affixed it against the surface, and activated its charge. The device emitted a silent vibration, destabilizing the molecular lattice. The wall cracked, forming a jagged gap just wide enough for them to slip through. Inside, the atmosphere shifted. The air carried a strange weight, oppressive, thick with alien resonance. The walls glowed faintly, veins of green energy coursing like blood through translucent stone. Shadows danced unnaturally, bending at odd angles. It felt like stepping inside a creature's chest cavity, where every breath belonged to something alive. "Stay sharp," Marcus whispered. His team nodded, their weapons raised. They advanced deeper, weaving through twisting corridors that seemed designed to disorient intruders. At times, the walls shifted subtly, the architecture resisting their intrusion. Harlow muttered under his breath, "It's like the place knows we're here." Marcus didn't disagree. The bastion wasn't just a fortress. It was Koresh's will made manifest. At last, they entered a vast chamber, its ceiling vanishing into darkness. In the center stood a throne-like structure carved from black crystal, spikes jutting outward like the bones of some colossal beast. Upon it sat General Koresh. The alien rose slowly, towering over them. His armor, forged of the same obsidian alloy as the bastion, gleamed with sinister brilliance. His crown-like crest flared as he spoke, voice a guttural resonance that shook the chamber. "Human vermin," Koresh declared, his words translated through the chamber itself. "You dare crawl into my sanctum? You're insects beneath a storm." Marcus stepped forward, weapon lowered but ready. Storms pass. Insects survive them. Koresh's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. "You believe survival equals victory? Pathetic. Your species will kneel." Marcus's voice was steel. "You'll kneel when your legs are broken." The chamber erupted in motion. Koresh lunged forward with terrifying speed, his armored limbs tearing grooves into the floor. Marcus fired, rounds sparking harmlessly against the alien shield. Harlow's team spread out, flanking, firing in coordinated bursts. The air filled with streaks of light, ricochets, and the roar of battle. Yet Koresh advanced unfazed, swatting aside incoming fire as though brushing flies from his path. Marcus rolled aside as a clawed strike split the ground where he had stood. He fired again, aiming for joints in the armor, testing for weakness. Sparks flew, but Koresh pressed on. The sheer force of the alien's presence threatened to overwhelm every instinct of survival. "Focus on the conduits," Marcus shouted, pointing to the glowing veins running through the walls. Harlow understood instantly. They redirected fire, targeting the pulsating veins. Explosions rocked the chamber as energy sputtered, dimming the glow. The bastion shuddered, its unfaltering. Koresh roared, fury shaking dust from the ceiling. His shield flickered, momentarily unstable. Marcus seized the chance, charging forward. He drew his combat blade, forged from human experimental alloy, and drove it into a seam of Koresh's armor. The blade bit deep, green ichor spraying. Koresh howled, striking Marcus with a backhand that sent him crashing against the wall. Pain lanced through his ribs, but he forced himself upright. "You bleed after all," Marcus spat, wiping blood from his mouth. Koresh loomed, his eyes glowing with wrath. "I bleed, but you break." He raised a clawed limb, ready to crush Marcus. Harlow's voice rang out, raw and desperate. Now! The team unleashed concentrated fire on the damaged conduits. Energy cascaded wildly, arcs of green lightning tearing through the chamber. The bastion convulsed as if alive, its own power turning against it. The shock wave staggered Koresh, his shield collapsing entirely. Marcus surged forward, ignoring the agony in his body. He rammed the blade again, this time higher, piercing through armor into the alien's chest. Koresh convulsed, mandibles clattering in a scream that was both rage and disbelief. His massive form staggered, falling to one knee. The irony was not lost. Marcus leaned close, whispering through clenched teeth, "I told you you'd kneel." With a final thrust, he drove the blade deeper. Koresh collapsed, the impact reverberating through the chamber. The bastion's glow flickered violently, then dimmed to nothing. Silence followed, broken only by the ragged breaths of surviving humans. The team stood stunned, staring at the fallen warlord. Marcus pulled the blade free, its edge dripping alien ichor. Harlow approached, his eyes wide. "You did it." "No," Marcus said, his voice flat, his gaze fixed on the dark throne. "We did it, and this is only the beginning." As if an answer, the walls groaned, the structure collapsing without Koresh's will to sustain it. Dust filled the chamber, cracks spiderwebbing across the floor. Marcus signaled to his team. "Move. We're not dying in his tomb." They fled through the shattering corridors, emerging into the broken night. Behind them, the bastion crumbled, consumed by its own collapse. The alien fortress, once an unshakable symbol of dominance, now lay in ruin. For the first time, Marcus felt the tide shift. Humanity had struck the heart of the enemy, and survived. The war was far from over, but hope no longer felt like a myth whispered in trenches. It was alive, forged in blood and fire. The ruins of the bastion still smoldered behind them, a jagged silhouette against a fractured horizon. Fires crackled through collapsed walls, and ash drifted like snow on poisoned winds. Marcus Vale stood among the wreckage, his uniform torn, blood seeping through his ribs where Koresh's blow had left its mark. Around him, the survivors of his strike team gathered, battered but alive. Their breaths were sharp, their eyes hollow with exhaustion, yet bright with something new, resolve. Silence settled, heavy but alive. For the first time, the air wasn't dominated by the unshakable hum of Zyrith power. Marcus raised his comms unit. "Command, this is Vale. Bastion neutralized. Target down." The reply came broken by static, then sharpened. "Repeat, Vale, confirm. You mean General Koresh is dead?" Marcus's voice was flat, controlled. "Confirmed. Koresh is finished." He knelt before humanity. A pause stretched. Then cheers erupted through the comms, distant voices from bunkers and trenches alike. For soldiers who had only known retreat, it was more than a report, it was a spark. Harlow stepped forward, eyes wide with disbelief. "Sir, if Koresh is dead, then the Zyrith chain of command is shattered. He wasn't just a general. He was their warlord." "Which means they'll come for blood," Marcus said. His tone carried no triumph, only calculation. The horizon lit with distant flashes as scattered alien legions faltered. Without Koresh's psychic command, coordination collapsed into chaos. Yet chaos didn't mean safety. A beast without its head still had claws. The team regrouped, marching toward extraction through broken fields littered with bodies, human and alien alike. The smell was unbearable, but no one complained. Each step was heavy with the knowledge that survival itself was defiance. They reached the rally point as transports descended, engines roaring against the wind. Soldiers on board gaped as Marcus strode up the ramp, carrying the blade still slick with Koresh's ichor. Whispers rippled instantly. A human had felled the warlord who declared them nothing but vermin. General Abrams himself met them at the command hub. His face, lined by years of grim duty, was unreadable at first. "Vale," he said slowly, "do you realize what you've done?" Marcus set the alien blade on the table, its dark surface glistening under harsh lights. "We cut out the heart of their campaign. Now the rest of the body doesn't know whether to fight or flee." Abrams stared at the blade, Then back at Marcus. You didn't just kill a commander. You toppled a symbol. Every soldier out there will rally to this. Around them, officers murmured, voices swelling with cautious hope. Yet Marcus caught the shadow behind Abrams's eyes. He knew it too. Symbols cut both ways. For every human who found courage, an alien would find rage. News spread faster than fire on dry fields. Across occupied worlds, humans whispered the story. Koresh had fallen to a man who refused to kneel. Resistance cells rose from silence. Prisoners who once waited for execution now plotted escape. For the first time, despair cracked. Yet on the alien side, the shockwave was different. Fragmented reports revealed infighting among Koresh's lieutenants. Without his command, they fought each other for dominance. Armies stalled. Fleets hung indecisive in orbit, but their hatred sharpened. Council meetings within the human coalition erupted into argument. Some saw opportunity, demanding an immediate counteroffensive. Others feared retaliation, warning that Koresh's death could trigger planetary purges. The room pulsed with tension until Marcus, still in torn uniform, stepped forward uninvited. You want the truth? His voice cut through the noise. Koresh wasn't a god. He was flesh and bone, and I proved it. If we strike now, we turn their fear into retreat. If we hesitate, we give them time to crown another tyrant. The chamber fell silent. Abrams leaned back, studying him. And who will lead the strike? You. Marcus's eyes were hard. Not me. All of us. Humanity. We've been fighting in shadows long enough. It's time to stand in the open and make them bleed for every inch they've taken. That night, Marcus stood alone on the command balcony, watching ships cross the dark sky. The ache in his ribs deepened with each breath. But his thoughts were elsewhere. Koresh's last moments replayed again and again. His disbelief, his fall, the irony of his knee on the stone floor. Marcus felt no joy, only weight. Killing one warlord hadn't ended the war. It had lit a fuse. Footsteps approached. Harlow stood beside him, quiet for a moment before speaking. You know, people are already calling you the man who broke Koresh. Marcus didn't turn. Names don't matter. Results do. Still, Harlow said with a faint smile, it means something to them, to all of us. Marcus let the silence stretch, then finally exhaled. Then let it mean this, that we don't kneel. Not now. Not ever. The next morning, orders came through. Coordinated strikes across 3 systems. Human fleets emerging from hiding. Resistance cells armed with intelligence Marcus's team had gathered. For the first time, humans would fight not just to survive, but to push back. As the battle groups prepared, Marcus entered the hangar. Soldiers paused as he passed, saluting not just out of regulation but respect. He returned the gestures briefly, unwilling to let reverence grow into idolatry. He knew too well the danger of worshiping men as symbols. He had just killed one. Abrams intercepted him before boarding. Vale, if you join this offensive, you won't be a shadow anymore. You'll be a target. Every alien warlord will want your head. Marcus tightened his gloves. Gaze steady. Good. Let them come. Let them know humanity doesn't fear names or crowns. Let them know we break them the same way we broke Koresh. Abrams nodded once, grim pride in his eyes. Then go show them. When the fleets ignited their drives, the void itself seemed to tremble. Human warships, once scattered, now surged forward in coordinated waves. Broadcasts carried Marcus's words across occupied systems. They said we would kneel. They said we would break. But we're still here. And now it's their turn to bow. Cheers erupted in bunkers, in resistance hideouts, even among civilians in chains. Hope became not just a whisper, but a roar. As Marcus strapped and aboard the lead vessel, he felt the weight of a galaxy pressing down. The war was far from won, but something irreversible had shifted. Humanity was no longer prey. Harlow's voice came over comms, steady and sharp. All units ready. Orders, sir. Marcus stared into the endless dark ahead, where alien fleets waited like predators. His voice carried calm steel. Advance. Break their lines. And remind them, every empire kneels when its legs are broken. Engines roared. The fleet surged into the abyss.